So what the new method through this program is using a chunk language base. And I know you've seen chunks before, but you probably haven't heard, why they are the way they are. Or maybe you have, but they're going to be used a little bit differently in this case. That'll come in a bit. And basically, the chunk language base, there's all this experimental evidence and whatnot to prove that, students who actually learn a language, like when we learn a language, or when even students who learn a second language, they don't actually learn lexical grammar. They learn like sentences that have been grammaticized. I don't even know if that's a word, but grammaticized instead of the other way around, learning the grammar to make a sentence. Actually learn the sentence. The way it's organized is it's chunk in context. So if you look at the book, eventually you'll be able to see the book. I'll put up a few pages of it here. But basically you'll notice that it looks like it's just all fill in the blank. The whole book is fill in the blank, which can either be very easy or very difficult, right? Depending on your style and what you like. So I'll kind of show you how to do that. The more important thing here is not really the chunk, but more the context from the teaching perspective. From the learning perspective, it's the chunk that's important. From the teaching, we're teaching context. The 4 language skills are obviously reading, writing, listening, speaking. Contextual connections, I'll go over that as I kind of do a quick mock review. And basically, they're trained to use these chunks repetitively. So there'll be 8 written and 4 speaking. So in each lesson, there's 12 chunks to learn. Okay? But they're always not going to learn all 12, right? They learn 3 out of 12, that's good enough. But it kind of has to be ingrained, right? Not just review 3 out of 12, it's like ingrained 3 out of 12. And they'll do 3 lessons per day, which means they're learning 36 chunks in a day. Okay. How many they'll digest and remember 6 years from now, I don't know. Hopefully 1, right? Maybe 2, I don't know. And the contextual connection is basically this. It's kind of really high level. It's not really that important, but there are 2 similar contexts and 2 related contexts. Okay? They're not the same. So reading and writing are similar contexts, so they're almost the exact same situation. But the related context between reading and listening, the context is not the same situation. It's like a mutated form of that situation. It'll become clear once you see the actual code. Any questions up to this point? So when you talk to your kids, that first day when they come into class, you might want to spend a little bit of time that first day telling them what this program is. Okay? Because most kids at Cheongdam, if they're like my former Cheongdam kids used to be, they just bunch everything into an English class. It's an English speaking class with a native teacher. Basically, that's all they know, right? And then if they take summer intensives, they're like, okay, so it'll probably be a grammar class or something like that. So they put them into huge groups. But this class is a little bit different from all the other ones. Yeah, it's to build your score, right? But it has kind of, the organization of it is really important. So the topic link is key. They might, because it's something they won't notice if you don't actually tell them explicitly. Or at least my kids wouldn't know that, right? So the topic link is key. And why? Because if you know background information about a topic, you can speak about it later on in tests, right? They have to believe that. So like, they learn all this stuff about family. Family is kind of a generic thing, but later on they'll learn about like economy or something, right? One of the topics is economy. And if later on they face a test that asks them something about economy, and they have no background knowledge, it'll be much harder to answer that question through speaking, writing, even through reading, right? So if they know a little bit of background about what it entails, it'll be better for them. So that's why the topic link is there. And then the fundamental in that day 1, that fundamental again is just to get some commonly used phrases into their whatever their brain box or something. In there, okay? And then day 2, is test prep, blah, blah, blah. Most test prep schools, I don't know if you know this, but most test prep schools don't focus on passage types. All the schools out there amazingly in Korea, for all their ESL education, they really focus a lot on the questions. They put a lot of emphasis on questions, because you got to get the question right to get the point, right? So it makes sense, emphasize the question. If you know what a main idea question is, you should technically be able to answer that properly, right? But there's not a lot of places that actually deal with passage types. Okay, so as far as I know, this is one of the first times we're using passage types. I haven't found another school that actually does it. And basically, this is not the basic passage type you've heard of before, like a biology passage type or something like this. This is more like advertisements and letters, like breaking a letter down. What goes inside of a letter Or why would people use a chart instead of a letter to someone? What's the difference between the information they're trying to convey? And if you can get that basic thought, then the questions do become easier, right? Because you're a little bit more focused. Okay? It's not just any passage. Okay, so this is a sample of the first lesson in the first chapter, day 1. So this is the first thing that you're going to see. Okay, so there's read smart, followed by write smart, and then listen smart, and then speak smart. Each one is always in the same order. There's a pattern to it. But you don't have to stick to the read, write, listen, speak order, actually. Okay? You can switch write and read. You can do write first and then do the read, or you can switch listening and speaking. But there's a, if you're going to switch it, there's a reason to switch it. Okay, so I'll show you the relationship and then you'll be able to figure it out from there. So obviously they read this first, it's a letter. Okay, here Miss Clemson, I guess you can quickly read it. So have them read it, okay? Don't do any analysis on it, really. Okay, don't do much analysis on it, whether they understand it or not. Personally, it doesn't matter to me, but if it matters to you, you can use a little bit, but it's not really comprehension. They read it, and then jump to the bottom where these are the chunks, okay? In the answer keys, it's actually lined up. They have lines to show you, because obviously the right side is in Korean. If you speak Korean, that's kudos to you. If you don't, just follow the line matching. All they have to do is match the stuff. Leave them alone. They can do that independently. It's not very hard. It's going to be super easy for them. So they match up those meanings, and once they match up the meanings, you can revisit the reading section. Okay, you revisit this reading section, and because now they know the Korean meanings of those key phrases, they'll be able to look at this again and read it one more time, and this time understand it. Okay, whether you've actually given the lesson or not. Okay? They'll be able to understand almost all of it. If you're going to ask questions here, the question should be focused on the pattern or the context. So the pattern here is future, past, present. Okay? This is kind of something you kind of have to find or look for. Okay? If you notice, it says, sorry, but I won't be in school tomorrow. Okay, so she's talking about the future. Then she jumps and says, we're still not back from our family trip, the present. Okay? It's a long story. We were supposed to go camping, but things just kept going wrong. Now she dives into the past, talks about what happened in the past. So everything is past tense. Right? She's talking about stuff that happened. And then she jumps back into the present and says, we're still at the motel. Okay? And then the future again, see you soon, I hope. So you see in a letter, right? You'll see this in day 2 again, but in a letter, there's actions and feelings. Right? Basically, in any letter that anybody writes, there's actions and feelings are the main point of any letter. And so the feelings are usually written in present tense, right? And actions are usually written in past tense. Again, this is not a solid rule, but again, you'll see this again in the day 2 one where we actually connect this. But so here you might want to focus on that kind of organization. So in another one, if it's not a letter, you might notice, hey, they're talking about a study here, right? Some kind of research study. Then obviously there's going to be 2 groups of people, right? So then just compare the 2 groups of people. That's kind of what they should notice, what the pattern is there. Or if you ask context questions, you might want to ask stuff like, okay, so what broke down? And then they say the van broke down. And once they say the van broke down, they're supposed to be using, one of these chunks as they speak it. So they can't just say the van, right? They should be saying the van broke down on the way, or something like that. So since they can look at this, it should be fairly easy for them to answer those. But it gets faster and faster. Okay. Any questions so far? And then, of course, you have some comprehension questions. Now, these questions are not actually testing their comprehension because they probably understood it by now. This is basically getting them to write some things using the chunk. So again, the van broke down on the way. Now, because it's the next page, they're kind of writing it out where they said, everyone got the flu. So that small word chunk, got the flu, is kind of what they're learning, right? It's usually not got a flu or something like that. So that's the kind of thing that they need to know. It's got the flu. Everyone says got the flu, right? So then they just write that. It's fairly easy there. And then go into the diagram. And then this diagram kind of gives you another hint to the organization of the passage. Here, obviously, it's cause and effect. Right? You have these effects. They lead to some kind of cause. So you can draw their attention to that pattern, or you can get them to, again, answer using like those little sentence fragments. It doesn't have to be a full sentence. Like, they don't have to say, the car wouldn't start, or something like that. They just have to say wouldn't start. You know, those 2 or 3 words that are bunched together. It's kind of that key. You can always do, of course, a little preview to get them warmed up. You can just talk about family trips. Like, where was your last family trip? You know, what was your worst family trip? Something like that. It usually helps to go to the extreme, right? You go their best or their worst, or you know, when they almost died on a family trip. If they don't have one, they should, I don't know, be lying to you or something. Basically, if you just look at it on the surface, it's super simple, right? All they need to do is create a variation by, you know, checking the box and then writing down a sentence beside it. Since they have an example of the chunk width in bold above, won't be in school. Everything else is fairly easy. I won't be in school tomorrow. My brother won't be in school tomorrow. I won't be home tomorrow. So it's super easy and it's very repetitive, right? So now here's where you'll probably need to make this a competition or something like that, right? They don't always have to, just because it says write it, they don't have to write all 4 of them. There's 4 of these every time. There's 4 of these exercises. They don't have to write them every time. You can make them speak the first one, write the second one, speak the third one, and then write the 4th one, right? You can make it into a contest, a competition. You can put them into pairs, right? And see who can finish their 2 boxes, their number 1 and 2 first, or something like that, right? You can have them not even close. You can have them close the book, and we'll study the thing first. Close the book. Have 2 students come up to the front, and then you say, okay, my brother in home, and then on whoever writes the one first, you know, my brother won't be at home tomorrow. You know, like they finish the sentence on the board, and whoever finishes first wins, right? So you can do that kind of stuff, that kind of like activity stuff, and that should make it a little bit more dynamic. Yes, that's the word. Okay. Unscrambling. This is the hardest part, I think, because it's really hard to help people unscramble stuff. I don't know if you've ever tried, but helping people who can't unscramble stuff is really difficult, right? It's like trying to teach them how to untangle a knot, because it's not really a process-oriented skill. So the theory behind this, I don't know if you care or want to know, but the theory behind this is language, learning a second language, the fundamentals of a second language require people to learn word associations. Word associations. And that's what unscrambling does to your mind, subconsciously, without you knowing it. You have to put together some word associations. And so it's very difficult to teach, okay? Have them try to put these chunks together. Again, this can be a competition, right? Like, who can put the first one together first, and you win, and you know, you're my favorite kid for the next 5 minutes, or whatever. But one tip you could give them is find the chunk of the day, and that'll help them. Because a lot of kids, when you put this in front of them, Korean kids, what they'll do, I don't know about your kids, but what they'll do is they'll go by grammar, and they'll say, okay, I need a subject, object, verb. So which one of these words is the subject? It's coming first, right? Which one's the object? That's got to come second. It's a very poor way to do it, actually. They should be just automatically, subconsciously word associating, and they can do that if you tell them to find the chunk of the day. So each one of these, like, kept going wrong was the chunk of the day. So once they remember, oh, in front we did chunk of the day, which is kept going wrong, they automatically put those together, and now they only have one choice left over to put somewhere. They can say things kept going wrong, or kept going wrong things. But at that point, they should get the feeling. Okay, like, then they can go a lot quicker. Same with the second one, right? Wouldn't start was the chunk. So once they remember wouldn't start, then the car is just there, right? Any questions about that? Okay, now here comes the connection part. So this is the part I was talking about. This is a letter again, and if you notice, we did a letter in the reading part, right? And the reading part had a very similar thing. The people are different. This time it's Freddie and Laura instead of Miss Clemson and that girl. And so here, but it's basically the same structure. I'm sorry, but I won't be at soccer practice tomorrow. Before it was, I won't be at school tomorrow. I'm not back from my family vacation, or I'm not back from my family trip. So they've changed slight things, but kept everything pretty much the same. Okay? Why is the question, right? Like, why make it so dry, right? Why make it so repetitive? I'm not sure how to explain it. There's theory behind it, but you don't want to know. You don't want to know that. What you do want to know is how to make this lively. If you're going to ask the question here, it shouldn't be on main idea or major details or stuff like that. It should be context. So what's different from the previous passage? So here, where won't Freddie be tomorrow? Won't be at soccer practice. Good. Won't be at is the chunk. So they'll say won't be at soccer practice. Good. Okay. What about that girl from before? Where won't she be? And they should use school, right? Won't be at school, right? Okay, so here then we move on. This guy, where did he go? He went to vacation, right? He went on a vacation. Where did she go before? Went on a family trip. Okay, she went on a family. So you can do that kind of comparison. You can jump back and forth. See if they can remember what happened in the previous without looking back. Okay. If they can't, obviously you can make them look back. But because it's so similar here, they'll say won't be at, and then all they have to remember is that it was school, okay? But won't be at school, won't be at soccer practice, won't be at Changdang, won't be at home, won't be at. Once you hear all those things, they're focusing on the difference, because that's what people do, right? People focus on the difference. So if I tell you those bunch of things, you're trying to think, okay, he said school, he said home, he said soccer practice. You're not remembering won't be at, won't be at, won't be at, right? But through that process, they learn won't be at, even though they're focusing on the difference. So kind of do a comparison between the writing and the reading part. Of course, they have to fill in these blanks too. Okay. To get them to fill in the blanks, try to get them to do it back from memory. But if they can't, look back. They can either look back at the previous reading passage or at the chunks that they had on the first page. Okay. Listen smart. You will have CDs to get with the book. Everybody's using CD players, I assume. Anybody can't play a CD in their classroom? So play the CD and just follow the instructions for the listen smart. Because listening, there's really no trick to it. You just listen. And they're repeating stuff, we'll make them repeat sentences, we make them repeat the whole thing, whatever. Here, they just listen to it, and then, so each one will play to tell the truth, and so they have to just fill in. It's dictation. Make them dictate, and then make them match the definition with the word. It's fairly easy. Taking that connection stuff up, you can make them do it. You can say, okay, let's number them on the left. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Also number the ones on the right. No, just number this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then say, okay, to tell the truth, which one was it? Number 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the other students can kind of chime in. Really good. Again, listen to the dialogue and do the questions. Don't spend too much time here on this. Okay? Yeah, this is a little bit of comprehension, but it's not really a main focus. Okay? So you can do this however you feel. You can just run a discussion with it. You don't even have to answer these questions. You can run a side discussion on it. You have a better question. Doesn't matter. Not that important. But then the third part is this is the main part. So all the main parts I think are in these colored boxes. The context has changed and the format has changed. Between read and write, the context changed, but the format didn't change, right? So now, between read and listen, both have changed, the context and the format. Now it's a conversation, so it's colloquial chunks, right? So the situation is the same though, because, hi Amber, how was your trip? Not very good, to tell the truth. I'm sorry to hear that, what happened? So she talks about that trip. It's that same trip that she wrote the letter about. But now she's having a conversation about it with her friend. Okay. So what can you teach them here? Any ideas? Like how would you normally cover a dialogue in class?
Do you have to fill in the blank first?
Yes, they do.
And afterwards you go over it?
Yes. The blank is you play track 5 and so it'll blah, 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 and then they just dictate. You can pause it and stuff.
I'm thinking because they're like EC kids and like Maybe they could like role play everything.
Yeah, that'll actually work, yeah. Because they're young kids, right? So you can have them role play, you can practice it, yeah. They can act it out if they want. For this part, when you do ask questions, it should be stuff like, the difference between a dialogue and a written letter is here in the dialogue, the setup is really important. You know, how did this dialogue come about? Why is the boy asking, "How was your trip?" You know, that kind of stuff.
Since this is dialogue, you said like the order does matter. One suggestion would be like to like cut up into strips and ask put them in pairs or teams to like arrange it in order, and whoever is fastest wins. Or if you have more time, pace them on their back and then make them arrange themselves in order. So yeah.
That'd be awesome. Having young kids is really awesome because we can do that. Do that to high school kids. Yeah, well, don't let them cut their textbooks, but you know, obviously photocopy, your book and cut them up and stuff like that. Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah. It was good back of their head. That'd be fun. But I guess the only focus here, the thing that I'd like you to draw their attention to is you can do anything you want with it, but draw their attention to how the listening dialogue is different from the reading letter and how they're similar. The same characters, the same situation, but how is this a little bit different? Right? The sentences are shorter, right? She's just giving like short tidbits of information. The chunks have changed, right? They're a lot more casual, that kind of stuff. Right? Get them to know that. They won't find that on their own. The regular Chunggang program is fluency versus accuracy. In Chunggang, we obviously teach fluency, right? I like making music, all that is great. It's good stuff. What's up? That's all good, right? But in this program, they need to up their accuracy. Because again, if they say, hey man, it's all good, they're going to get 0 on the test, right? Even though that's the right answer. They need to have it spoken accurately. So in the speaking section, what we're trying to teach them is, again, this is role play also. Again, like Tracy said, here there's a lot of role playing. You can do competitions with it or whatever. But the point is, if you're going to give any feedback, it's on their accuracy. Hey, you left that word out, that's not cool. Okay, and same thing here. This is just, now, if you compare this to the previous dialogue, again, that's what happens. You compare this dialogue to the previous dialogue. Characters are different. Again, the context is different. That one was, they went on a camping trip. Here, this guy won or something, but wants to go fishing, but something happened. So now you can talk about camping versus fishing. Right? But what's the same? Remember, still, I'm sorry to hear that, it's still what you say, right? No matter what trip you went on. So they're focusing on the difference. Oh yeah, this guy went fishing. But the last one, I remember he was playing soccer or something like that, right? But through that process of answering those questions and doing that, they get more practice on, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry to hear that. You don't have to tell them that, by the way. Okay, and then it goes into the next lesson, family tree. So the first one was family trips, now this is family tree. You do it all over again with 4 different stories. One letter, I don't think it's a letter this time. Yeah, it's not a letter, it's a narrative, whatever. You do it again. This pattern changes all the time, so this time it's a narrative. This time it's, hey, we've got the same uncle, and we didn't know that. So, there's that kind of thing. So the story changes, the topic slightly changes, and then the form really changes. But again, compare the reading to the listening, compare the reading to the writing, compare the listening to the